We're going to talk a little bit about big data. So not in the sense that big data is taking over the Internet of Things. Absolutely everything that you can Google on the Internet right now is not something I'm going to regurgitate for you. Rather, I want to talk about what DMTI has done to essentially challenge big data. Not only big data for enterprise-sized businesses, but also small businesses who don't have enough data, and they're always looking to acquire. As you can see here, we all know that most of the data that we have in the world was created in the last 2 years. And in the next few years, we will actually have more data than we've ever had in the history of mankind. So what do you do with all this information? Well, we definitely know there's an overload of it. So which organizations, or sorry, any organizations you've spoken with probably talk about wanting more data. They have a big data strategy. They want to acquire more data from external sources. But for some reason, we are entirely disregarding the data that we already have. So these questions is something that we've heard about at DMTI for the last, I don't know, many, say, dozen years or so. Organizations looking to understand their data, they want more. They want to contextualize the information they have. Who's my best customer? Who's my worst customer? What do I do about the people that left my business? You know, that churn use case. So these are the questions that have really been resounding well with us, which is why we decided to invest in a product that essentially leverages all of our location intelligence that we have been investing in over the last 20 years. So we take in about 7,500 different data sources to educate our distillation database, which accounts for nearly all addresses in Canada. And as you know, business data can be linked to location. Do most businesses understand that or leverage, or for lack of a better word, actually exploit that fact? Chances are no, and I know I'm definitely preaching to the converted here, considering we're all location experts. So when it comes to data overload, here's a few numbers for you, and pretty much the only numbers I'll share. At DMTI, we have about 99% of all addresses in Canada. And considering that there are about, well, as you can see here, 15 million addresses, that is a lot of information. So when businesses talk about wanting to see their data in context to the rest of their business or their data strategy, what does that even mean? If you want to provide all addresses in Canada to the business to say, go ahead and market, you're a business to customer organization, you're B2C, you could potentially have every single customer in Canada. That's not what they want. But there's too much information out there, so how do you narrow it down? Even when you have narrowed it down, what pieces of information are actually important? So are you looking at demographics? Does financials matter to you? So for example, how much the homes are in Toronto these days? Everybody knows single detached homes in Toronto are skyrocketing. Is that what's important to your business? Or conversely, location-based information like proximity to perils, is that important? Really understanding what are those key variables can be totally overwhelming. And you know, I would like to quote Phoebe Buffay on this, and the famous line of, they don't know that we know that they know that they know. Like, what do you actually know about your customers? That's what I want to find out. Everybody's acquiring more data to try to understand this, but there's too much noise. So this is where it should be simple. Let the data run your business and not the other way around. We meet with customers every day who have large data acquisition strategies. They're taking data from the outside and they're pulling it in, rather than leveraging the already rich database of information they have inside to try to understand their customers better. Who knows your best customer? If you Google that, you will have countless different CRM and workflow management tools telling you who they think your best customer is. But the reality is, oops, sorry, dramatic effect. The reality is only you know your best customer, and if you're working with clients who have similar problems as this, then this resonates with you. When it comes to data quality, there's obviously a very big concern. So here, we're talking about visualizing the data that you have. What if your database is full of bad information? And I'll tell you, out of all the customers we've spoken with over the last 6 months for this new product, every client has approached us saying they do not have a data quality problem. By the time we've analyzed their database, we have confirmed to them that they in fact have a substantial data quality problem. One address point being off in terms of data analytics would entirely skew your results. A good example of that is if you're leveraging third-party data, like demographics, for example. My home, 1048, versus the home across the street from me, 1049, is in two completely different Statistics Canada dissemination areas, which is that fabric that it goes across Canada in order to conduct the census surveys for Stats Can. If you analyze my address incorrectly and you put that one digit across the street from me, you're going to get a totally different demographic profile for where I live. So data quality is crucial in understanding analytics. And you'd be surprised because most organizations we speak with do not start with data quality. But when it comes to visualizing your data, this is how we do it. It's a bit unorthodox and it's a bit unconventional, but we actually talk about customer segmentation. And you can see up here on the right-hand side, the upper right-hand corner, the flowers, if you will. That's actually our way of talking about customer segmentation and clustering. Visualizing your data with that spatial or location-centric approach is definitely not very unique. Pretty much everybody in this room understands the value of location intelligence. But not all organizations are leveraging that for analytics. A good example is, how close does your book of business live to, for example, in accordance to a flood zone? If you did not know that your book of business is in a flood zone, chances are you have not priced that policy accordingly, especially if you're in insurance. Another example is, how far do your customers live away from schools? If you're working in the retail sector and you're purposely advertising to families with young children, that could be very important information to you to know that nearly every one of your best customers lives within a 5-minute walking distance from a park. So that type of information we want to leverage. Location Hub Analytics does that with a robust series of algorithms that actually kick out on the end a very concise series of variables that you should focus on. So it's definitely a very unconventional approach to trying to find the data that actually matters. This screenshot is of our Location Hub Analytics product. What you see here is actually a very simplified data set of only 8 variables that we've identified as having statistical correlations to your data set, which means you start out with a file that has 1 million records. If you have 1 million rows, after we've enriched it through our process internally, you will end up with an additional 4,000 columns. This is way too much data to understand. And if you wanted to do this in-house with a team of data analysts or data scientists, you're talking about burning a lot of calories in order to find these patterns. When you're using Location Hub Analytics, you don't have to burn any calories. The amount of calories you burn is pressing start, and the engine does it in the background, all the while leveraging the importance of location-based information. So when it comes to location-centric data, you're talking about those proximity to perils that I mentioned, demographics, modeled all the way down to the address point, so that you can understand, based on your customer data set within your CRM, who your ideal customer is. What do they look like? Where do they live? What kind of income do they bring in? Does that even have an impact on your business? One thing we're noticing is that there are large blanket statements that are made about your customer data set within that CRM. Chances are your CRM may not even be updated. What happened the last time one of your sales team left? Did anybody update their records? Did anybody talk about the sale that went bad, the sale that went well? Do you have win-loss buried within your CRM? It's so difficult to pile more data on to a data set that has not been refined yet. Start internally and then work your way outside. At this time, Location Hub Analytics, because it's new to the marketplace, we're getting a ton of feedback on how people are wanting to analyze their data and the results they're finding. What we're finding with this approach is that you're only focusing on the data that matters, but more importantly, the data you can actually consume. Can you consume 4,000 variables that are important to your business? Nobody can.